Hello, and welcome to Legends of Amberland, The Forgotten Crown. So, this is almost definitely not going to be a full Let's Play. I'm about a week out from my daughter being born at this point, so the chances of playing through a reasonably long RPG in that time is slim. Basically my goal is I want to do a few episodes, 6 to 8 episodes, sort of treat it like almost like a little mini series, and maybe introduce some of you to a game that you might not have come across before. It's a relatively recent game, only a couple of years old, and it completely passed me by, so I figured it might have done the same with some of you. And if you stuck through my 50 episode series on Might and Magic, it's also a game that would probably appeal to you. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about it a little bit. So it's a game designed, it's basically a one-man development team. You look at the credits here, it's a pretty short list. Design, programming, all done by one person. He had a couple of artists help him out, and musician. And I would assume these are like playtesters. So, yeah, not a lot of people involved here. And, but it's a game that makes me happy. It ticks a lot of the boxes that I like in games like Might and Magic and stuff like that. And it fixes some of the things that are issues with games like Might and Magic. So without further ado, and by the way too, Legends of Amberland 2 is supposed to be out sometime this year in 2023, so got that to look forward to as well. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into a new game. I'm going to be playing on hard. So hard, monsters deal more damage, experience required to level up goes up by 20%, and all prices are doubled. I like this difficulty. A normal, I think, is way too easy. Insane, I tried around with it a little bit, but it just... basically, you do one fight and then go heal. Do one fight, go heal. One fight, heal. Hard, I like the pacing of. And normal, I just found I started dominating things too much. I've actually been playing through it on normal with my daughter sitting on my lap, my 3-year-old daughter, hanging out. It's an adventure game, and she loves it. So, yeah. Anyhow, let's start by looking at character creation. And you've got 4 races: humans, half-elves, elves, and dwarves. Interestingly enough, you'll notice that female dwarves don't exist. Dwarven females are rare. There's even a base of the myth that they do not exist at all. And then different things with their attributes and all that sort of stuff. Sorry, give me just half a second here. Okay, sorry. But yeah, so you've got 7 characters to fit into the party. Which is quite a few actually, but I like it because it does let you do a little bit more support. And it also, the way that it works is you've got the center 3 characters here are your front line, and then you've got your 2 flanks on either side that are less likely to get targeted. So center line is kind of where you want your fightery types, and then on the flanks, your squishier folks. So, gonna kick things off, we'll do a human female. And each of the races has a sub-race. You've got Heartlanders, which give you knowledge, toughness, and dexterity. You've got Highlanders, which give you strength, dexterity, and hit points. And then you've got Nomads, which give you toughness, willpower, and encumbrance. For this first class or character I'm going to make, I'm going to go with a Highlander. The strength and dexterity is very helpful, and the extra hit points are certainly useful as well. Now, when it comes to classes, there are 6 core classes that any race can be: knights, warriors, rangers, bards, wizards, and healers. And then there's 2 classes that are linked to your race. So humans can be troubadours or champions, and also half-elves can be champions as well. And the anybody can be any of these. And so in this case, I'm going to go for a human knight. Knights are fantastic because they wear extremely heavy gear, which is awesome. It makes them really versatile and very, very tanky. They're not quite as good at hitting things as a warrior is, but a knight will spend most of the game running around in plate mail. A warrior is probably going to spend most of their game running around in like chainmail and stuff like that, which makes a difference. So go for a knight. And find ourselves a portrait here. Like that portrait. We'll go with Trina. Now, when it comes to designing your characters, nothing is random. Everything is set by your race and your class and all that sort of stuff. And then you get 5 attribute points to distribute. So I'm going to go for a couple points of toughness, and now we'll get both up to strength and toughness of 10. Bump up hit points and make her hit reasonably hard. Dexterity, knowledge, willpower. Dexterity can be helpful. Knowledge is interesting. It increases the critical hit chance for the front line, but it's really not worth putting points into. So, yeah. So we'll go on to next character. So this flank here, I am going to do a female elf, which normally you wouldn't want to because elves get a penalty to like encumbrance and all that sort of stuff, but there is a special class that I am interested in grabbing. And for this class, I want the wood elf that gives me the dexterity, the knowledge, and the confusion immunity isn't a huge deal. Actually, you know what? Maybe actually I'll go for high elf. Mesmerize is more of a pain in the butt to deal with than confusion. So we'll grab a high elf. And the reason I wanted an elf is because I want the second character here to be one of the elf subclasses, which is a mage knight. So a fighter magic user. And basically the nice thing about the mage knight, even though they're not as tanky as some of the other fighter options because it's an elf, they actually have a pretty considerable encumbrance, especially for a hybrid caster. They have the same encumbrance as a warrior, and encumbrance will make more sense once I get playing, because that is what determines what gear you can wear. So the mage knight can actually wear almost as good a gear as the knight, which makes them pretty tanky. Plus spellcasting ability. I just like having them. I think they're a really diverse class, and I enjoy them. I was debating doing a ranger instead, but rangers are they struggle with encumbrance. They're pretty squishy. So we're gonna do the mage knight, and we're going to find a good portrait here. I don't know. I like that portrait here. And this is nice. Another character from my D&D campaign. So now in this case, she is a spellcaster, but she's very much a secondary spellcaster. So I'm most interested in getting her strength and toughness up, because she's primarily a frontline fighter. She'll have enough knowledge and willpower to sort of get it done eventually, but she's very much a secondary caster. The spells are there to help when I need them, but mostly she's there to hit things. So yeah. Next character, we're going to do a dwarf. So you can see the dwarves are cool because they get the maximum encumbrance and the strength is really, really helpful. And we're the Crit with axes, less useful. There aren't a ton of awesome magic axes that I've found, at least. Most of the good items and stuff like that tend to be swords. So, for the most part, the axe bonus doesn't help all that much. Now, in the case of this one, I'm actually going to go for a hill dwarf for the strength and the toughness. Not quite as frequently as the mountain dwarfs, but that maximum encumbrance makes a big difference. I really value encumbrance. And again, it'll make sense as I start playing through this. Now, for the dwarf, this first dwarf at least, I'm going to go for a warrior. He is there to hit things very, very hard. And that is his purpose, and that is what he's going to do. But the other cool thing, too, is you're not actually tied to a racial portrait. Like, we got the dwarf portraits in here somewhere. Yeah, here's the dwarf portraits. But I don't need to use a dwarf portrait. I could give him an elf's portrait if I felt so inspired. And in this case, what I'm going to do is, I like this guy. And so we're going to go with him, and this is Septimus. And in the case of Septimus, we're going to crank up our toughness and our strength. Again, his purpose is to hit things and hit things hard, and the better he is at doing that, the happier I'll be. Some of the humans work well for warriors as well. Definitely don't want to do elves or half-elves if you can avoid it on a fightery type. They just don't like the penalty to strength, especially the elf penalty to encumbrance, all that sort of stuff. And elves also, it takes them longer to go up in levels than anybody else. So that kind of sucks. Everything that they have, the willpower and the magic points, does absolutely nothing for a fighter. So, yeah. Okay. Next up, we're going to do a dwarf, another dwarf. And this one is actually going to be a dwarf. And in this case, what we're going to do is I am interested in the Ashen Dwarf. The +1 knowledge is kind of what I'm interested in here. The toughness is nice as well, but the +1 knowledge is... Or do I? Maybe actually I want to do the Frost Dwarf. Get the cold resistance, and get a bit more willpower, because one of the limiting factors on this guy is definitely going to be his spell points. So we'll go with the Frost Dwarf. And for him, I'm going to be picking one of the dwarf special classes. In this case, I'm going for Battlesmith. And the Battlesmith is a hybrid caster. Doesn't have as good armor as Iolnice will with the Mage Knight, or not Iolnice, that is Iolnice, that Iolnice has with the Mage Knight. Higher health, but he has a couple of really special spells that are incredibly, incredibly useful. So I'm going to snake a Battlesmith, and I have a portrait for a dwarf that I like for this. There he is. There's Renar. And in the case of Renar, I'm going to get his willpower up to 5 and bump his knowledge up to 6. He's, interestingly enough, in spite of his stats, going to primarily be a caster. Actually, no, I'm going to get his knowledge and willpower both at 5 and get his strength to 10. Every 10 strength points increases your encumbrance by 1, which is helpful. It's an important cutoff. Almost to the point that, I don't want to put knowledge up and point to toughness. There we go. But yeah, getting strength up to 10s or by 10 is pretty valuable. So let's do the next character, and this one is going to be another human. We need to make ourselves Helmuth. And in this case, I am going to go for a Heartlander for the knowledge and dexterity mainly, mostly the knowledge though, because I'm going to make him a troubadour. And the bard and the troubadour are interesting classes. The bard has some healing magic, but is a pretty mediocre fighter. Troubadour also has some healing magic. And actually, just give me a moment here. Okay, sorry. But yeah, so basically the bard and the troubadour have identical spell lists. They're both pretty mediocre fighters, but the bard gets access to healing magic sooner, and the troubadour gets access to the buff spells sooner. And I find the buff spells in general to be more useful. So with that in mind, go for the troubadour. And this is going to be Helmuth. And in his case, he's predominantly a caster, but I wouldn't mind getting his dex up a smidge. But other than that, get him some spell points with the willpower and a little bit of knowledge as well. And for Helmuth, I like... Where did Helmuth's portrait go? It's here somewhere. There he is. Yeah. Is that Helmuth? Yeah, we're getting into the dwarves now. Yeah, I like this for Helmuth. The other one I kind of like for Helmuth is that guy. But he looks more fightery than a troubadour. Whereas this guy, he sort of fits the sneaky, rogue, thiefy Helmuth, I think, a bit better. Last two, we are going to do a half-elf. Go for a female half-elf, and we're going to go for highborn heritage to get the dexterity and the willpower and the extra mana points. And this is going to be our healer. And our healer, where is she here? There she is. This is Alandra. And likewise for her big thing is going to be spell points. So get her spell points up as high, her willpower up as high as we can. Nothing else matters. They're a very straightforward class, but also pretty much essential. Now the last one is going to be a female elf, and we are going to go for I want high elf. No, we're going to go for the gray elf. Oh, this is choices. I like the knowledge, but at the same time, it's not critical. Realistically, the willpower probably helps more than straight up knowledge does. And even though the status effect immunity can definitely be helpful, there's other ways around that. Especially once you get further into the game and you start seeing the gear and all that sort of stuff. So we'll go with a gray elf. And she is going to be a wizard. The other option here would be a sage. The catch is the wizard has a couple of spells that the sage does not get access to. One is Wizard Shield, or Magic Shield, which isn't a huge deal because Alnice would have access to that as well. And she'll actually eventually be my main Magic Shield caster, just because she can afford to waste the spell points more than Gandora will be able to. But the other one is that Alnice will not have access to is one that boosts up resistances to elements, which is very helpful. The status effects and resistances and all that sort of stuff is a big part of the game. And so kind of planning around that, I think, is really useful. So we're going to go with our wizard. And for Gandora, we have a Gandora picture here. And in the case of Gandora, pretty straightforward. Knowledge and willpower, same as Alandra. And that's all that'll ever get spent there. loving her portrait less. What do I want? Go with that. I don't mind that, except she looks more wizardy. That might work. I like that one. Let's go with that for Alnice. Anyhow, that is it. So there's the party. We got Katrina the Knight, Septimus the Warrior, Alnice the Mage Knight, Renar the Battlesmith, Helmuth the Troubadour, Alandra the Healer, and Gandora the Wizard. So, let's begin the adventure. Letter from the Royal Wizard. One day, while you are dining at a local tavern, a tired messenger arrives with a letter from your old friend, Gorfundor, who is serving as the Royal Wizard in King Godric's court. You broke the seal and started to read. Hello, my friends. I hope to see you all in good health. As you might have heard, just a few years ago, I offered my services and counsel to King Godric, who gladly accepted my help. Just recently, while searching through the royal annals, I discovered something very disturbing. I don't want to write about it in this letter. It's not safe. Please come visit me in the royal castle south of Timberburg so that we could talk further. Please be quick. I'm counting on you. And here we go. Game starts. So yeah, very might and magic. And right down to like you've got a couple of quality of life things right off the bat here. I'm probably not going to do any gameplay in this episode, at least not really, but just sort of walk you through sort of some of the UI and all that sort of stuff. So you got a quest in progress, list of completed quests, which of course there are none yet. Titles and awards, again, none. And then this is basically like a little Corax note sort of thing. So information on the Western Territories. Civilized area ruled by human kings. The current ruler is King Godric, who resides in the royal castle near the city of Thorncrest. This area is relatively safe, since the royal knights took care of the biggest monsters. Still, smaller ones get through, not to mention bandits and other villains. There are 2 cities in the area, Timberburg in the north, which is a small town specializing in providing timber, and Thorncrest near the coastline, which acts as a local center of trade. The southern border of the territory is secured by Old Rock Castle. In addition, the domain of King Godric extends to a nearby small island with Watchdog Castle protecting sea routes. This area also houses the Great Library, the biggest place of knowledge dedicated to preserving old tomes. The Great Library is considered extraterritorial, and as such is protected by both King and the Wizards' Council. So you've got your characters here. You select them and you go through. It gives you their strength, gives you their damage, all their attributes, all their derived statistics, their talents. So in the case of Katrina and Septimus and Alnice, knowledge affects their critical hit chance, which is helpful. You can also switch their positions, which realistically I might actually start with Renar here. You've got their armor class. Actually, no, because his armor is 3, hers is 8, which is a significant difference. But you've got, like, he right now has more hit points than Alnice, and realistically, he'll probably usually have more hit points, but she's almost always going to beat him out on armor. So that's why I tend to put Alnice here, but it's also one of those things where if she starts getting beaten up, they're easy to swap. So, yeah. Helmuth here, you can see pretty low hit points, terrible armor. And then, of course, the wizards who are, spellcasters with even worse hit points. Got your map. This will autofill as you explore. You've got inventory. And I'm going to go into more depth with inventory later. But the key thing to remember is everything has a weight value. So full plate armor has an encumbrance of 20. She has a maximum of encumbrance of 43. So you total everything up and all the weights up, and if it's over her encumbrance, they suffer penalties. Other than that, there's nothing to prevent me from taking her full plate armor and throwing it on Alandra. Except for now, her status is crushed. Heavy penalties to damage and arcane. So minus 75% damage and a minus 75% penalty to your arcane skill, which is going to affect the spells and everything like that you can cast. So it definitely makes sense to give the light gear to the light people and the heavy gear to the folks with the higher encumbrances. So like Alnice here, she has 30 encumbrance. Septimus has 30, well, she has 29 encumbrance. Septimus has 32 encumbrance. Renar has 22 encumbrance. Which again is why Alnice tends to go in the front line. Just the heavier gear makes a big difference. Like her ability to wear chainmail instead of scale is not insignificant. And then you've got Helmuth with 15, and of course, again, the wizards have terrible encumbrance. You've got all these different slots. The accessory slots, the best I could describe them is kind of like relics from Final Fantasy VI or something like that. We'll be getting lots of different relics. Right now, I think we only have the elven brooches, which provide immunity to poison, and the elves start with those. So I could take that off, give it to Katrina, so now she's immune to poison. Makes a lot of sense to put those sorts of resistances on your front line, because it just prevents them from getting dinged. The different weapons will give different damage bonuses or penalties. So the axe does 105% damage, the longsword does 100, her dagger does 50% damage, but it also boosts up her arcane, which is one of those derived stats that affects how effective your magic is. Resting kind of speaks for itself. We'll get to that when we get to it. And then magic is all the spells. You don't have to go and learn spells at like a guild or anything like this. Instead, you get them as you level up, but then you also have requirements for arcane. Like your arcane has to be a certain level in order to cast the spell, and then as your arcane skill goes higher, it makes the spell more powerful. So if I were to compare here, he doesn't even have it yet. Okay, yeah, so she does have Elven Song. And so does Alnice, because she's an elf, and so does Gandora. We'll compare Alnice here. So you see she's got the 2 ticks in here because her arcane is at 10. And you can see level 2 mastery takes 10 magic points. Or 8 arcane, rather. Which means that it'll heal everybody 2 to 9 points of damage. Compare that to here, where because she has 3, it'll heal everybody 3 to 12. Not bad. Same deal with heal, and then if you look here, Power Fist, again, she's got 2 levels in it, so it does 1 to 45 damage, whereas Gandora's Power Fist does 4 to 120 damage. So that's nice. In the case of some of these where you see they aren't lit up at all, I can't actually cast the spell because I need to have an arcane skill of 25 before I can cast inspiration. Likewise here with sharpness, this is one of the spells that I want, one of the reasons why I take Renar along for the ride is because this sharpness spell, and then he gets another one later on that boosts armor, are both incredibly useful. Renar's big thing is he's got terrible mana. He's got 26 mana points. You compare that to Gandora, who's at 62, and he'll basically be able to cast this once and then do nothing else. So, yeah. Likewise here with Alnice, not a major caster, but she can fling power fists and stuff like that and do a little bit of healing, which is nice. This is just an elf thing. Elves get Elven Song and Elven Touch regardless of class. So even if like I'd made Katrina an elf, she could cast those spells. And likewise, half elves just get the Elven Song. But the Helmuth here, he can deal with the Afraid, Fear status effect, which is a useful thing to have. And yeah, that's about it. Other gear, not much else exciting at this point. The gear system in this is probably one of my favorite aspects of the game, especially as I start to go through it. And as a matter of fact, here, let me just options. Let's save, new save. Okay, but yeah, so this is my my higher level party, probably about the 50% way through the game. But if we look at the inventory here, you can see just the sheer variety of stuff. Like, you got things with protection on it that lets you roll twice when with your armor, and it picks the better roll. Displacement is basically a 33% chance of just straight up missing. You got different resistances, swords that give dexterity bonuses, protect against petrification. Septimus here has a shield that just gives him an extra 15 points of damage, and he gets to roll twice to hit, plus extra strength, all sorts of stuff like that. Alnice has this crazy shield that gives her lightning and petrification immunity and gives her like an armor bonus that's the same as her enchanted chainmail. Renar is a little bit more straightforward setup, but I mean, you can see how in depth a lot of this gear becomes, like, to the point that I don't even tend to throw things out or sell stuff, because I'm like, oh, but what if there's some other use where I need to have an encumbrance 4 shield for somebody? Or what if I want to bump up somebody's accuracy and give them 2 hits for some reason? I mean, realistically, this I could probably sell, but here's some more protection stuff. Like, maybe I want the protection bonus, but they can't afford 24. They only have 14 encumbrance available. Here's some paralysis protection in case I'm coming up against something that's paralyzing me. Helmuth here, he's got this crazy knife here, the Ultimate Dagger of Excellence. It does 90% damage, but it gives him a 33% crit chance, 5% chance to hit all monsters with 1 swing, and 2 attack rolls. So, like, he, in spite of, like, the fact that he's, like, this pokey little troubadour who doesn't really, like, 36 to 71, you compare that to somebody like Septimus, who does 103 to 206 damage. But he crits a lot. He does all sorts of cool stuff like that. And yeah, just has the potential to be a bit of a machine when it comes to that sort of stuff. One thing I will say is that the caster gear doesn't tend to be super exciting. Like, Gandora's still running around with her oak magic staff from the beginning of the game, and I think I picked up these robes like really early on as well. There's just not much stuff for casters, which is something that the dev has commented on and said he kind of recognizes and plans on changing in Amberlands too. But and there's a few other things like that have kind of come up at various times that critiques I have, but for the most part, it's a really fun game. And like I said, I'm not sure how long this series is going to be. My goal is to aim for 5, 6, maybe 7 episodes, just show you the early game a little bit, and kind of decide, hey, maybe this is a game that you would want, or whatever the case might be. But until the next episode, I will catch you then. Cheers.